Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video. In this video, I'll be talking about my experience playing through Kingdom Hearts 2.8 and Kingdom Hearts 3. This is kind of a sequel video to a video I did about a year ago, which I made immediately after having played all the games on the 1.5 plus 2.5 collection. And I took a break after playing those games, but I finally came back to Kingdom Hearts here after picking up 2.8 and 3, and played every game here in a row. So let's just get this out of the way. There will be spoilers for every game or movie in the 2.8 collection, which includes Dream Drop Distance, 0.2 A Fragmentary Passage, and Keyback Cover. And I also will talk spoilers about Kingdom Hearts 3 and the Remind DLC. So as I said, I did a video on 1.5 plus 2.5 already, where I came out of it being pretty mixed on the series as a whole. I mean, I didn't even finish Kingdom Hearts 1 or Rechain of Memories due to certain boss battles being super frustrating. And while I did enjoy my time with Kingdom Hearts 2 and Birth by Sleep, I did get burnt out on Kingdom Hearts after playing them. But every time I would look back on the series, I would have a massive amount of respect for the scale of the narrative it tries to tell. As convoluted as it is, I do have a lot of respect for the amount of foreshadowing and continuity between these games that were all released in like very different ways. But it wasn't until Black Friday of 2019 that I decided to finally pick up Kingdom Hearts 3, and at that point I decided to go out of my way to pick up 2.8 as well. And I finally got around to playing them around the time of the release of the Remind DLC, and from that point on, I played all the games in a row, and now I'm finally ready to talk about them. So let's start it off with 2.8, starting with Dream Drop Distance, which, if you don't know, is a remake of a 3DS game, and despite it being a side game, I mean, it's probably the most important game to play in the series before playing Kingdom Hearts 3. But let's start off with the gameplay, though, which, I mean, is mostly what you would expect from a Kingdom Hearts game. Now, while I did have difficulties with certain boss battles in some of the games I've played previously, this was actually a relatively easy experience here. I think the only time I died in the entire game was during the first Ansem fight towards the end of the game. And that was mostly due to a lack of focus. Like, I just, forgot to heal at one point and I ended up getting killed there. I mean, that being said, there were annoying fights here and there, but nothing that I ever got really frustrated with. It was more so just taking a while to get the boss's health down or trying to even find the boss to begin with. Like, that sort of stuff was frustrating. But the actual difficulty of the battle itself, like trying not to die during these battles, wasn't that hard. I think a major reason for that is that I do think this gameplay style here is a lot easier due to the command deck system that it uses for its combat, which was used in Birth by Sleep, but I don't remember it being as broken in Birth by Sleep. In this game, it's broken. I mean, it really is. Where here, what I did is I stacked all the cure magics and the fire magics. And I was able to just use the fire magics all in a row to injure the enemies. If I ever got damaged, I could just use cure. And instead of it using MP, what happens in this game is that they reload. So obviously you would have to wait a little bit of time before being able to use it again. But if you have like 3 cure spells, by the time you use the 3rd cure spell, the first one should be reloaded by that point. So there was never a point where I was that worried about health. I mean, as I said, like, to be killed, you would have to be completely caught off guard. And again, stacking the fire spells, you just spam those at the beginning of the fight, do a lot of damage to your boss, wait for them to reload, and do the same thing again. It made a lot of the boss battles a lot more tolerable in the game, but also kind of just broke the game as a whole. Now, like the other side games, Dream Drop Distance does have its gimmicks as well, the first of which being the drop system, which was an interesting way to handle having 2 playable characters here, where you had to play as both Sora and Riku, but unlike in Birth by Sleep or Chain of Memories, where each character had their own storyline and you played that storyline one after the other, here in Dream Drop Distance, you play the 2 playthroughs concurrently. When you're playing as a character, you have a drop gauge that continuously goes down over time, and when it runs out, you're forced to switch characters. I actually really liked how the system was handled, especially with how entwined the 2 storylines were. And I did like how when you switch characters, you were given bonuses for the other characters to use based on how many drop points you collected as the character you just finished playing. I really like that. The game also had this reality shift system, which it was fine. I mean, it's essentially a mini game that when you finish the mini game, it affects how the world is perceived, whether that be opening up a pathway that wasn't there before, or destroying some enemies that you couldn't kill any other way. What I didn't like about it was that I didn't feel like it was super clear when you were supposed to use it. I mean, I feel like when you're doing it for the first time, at least, you have no clue what you're really doing. It's like you just get to a point where you just don't know what to do, and then you just like hit the buttons for reality shift and it says, oh, it works. This game does also introduce flow motion, which does become a prominent system in Kingdom Hearts 3, which allows for more interactivity with the environments, like grinding on rails or spinning on poles. But another massive inclusion in this game was the Dream Eater system, which seemed like Kingdom Hearts' version of like Personas or like Pokemon, where they would be the main enemies of the game, but they would also be your allies in the game, where once you kill them, you would get recipes for them, and you can craft your own Dream Eaters to fight alongside you. This game also did have a replacement for the gummy ship sections in the dives, which I hated just as much. I mean, they're all had these like different objectives, from like killing enemies within the time limit, or defeating a boss, or getting like a certain amount of orbs. Like, I just didn't find it fun. I mean, I hate gummy ship missions. I hate the dives as well. The Disney worlds in this game felt very random. I mean, it felt like they were forced to pick source material that haven't been used previously, and it left them with a lot of scraps, where outside of the Hunchback of Notre Dame and Fantasia, the worlds here were completely unexpected to me. I mean, we had Tron Legacy for some reason, even though we already had Tron in the previous games. Like, they actually made a new world just for Tron Legacy. We had the Three Musketeers with, like, Donald, Goofy, and Mickey. Like, that was just weird. I mean, I don't know why that was there. We had this weird Pinocchio world that was, like, a theme park for Sora, but then, like, when you play as Riku, it's a remake of Monstro. Like, that was weird. Which I also didn't love, like, the inconsistency between how, like, sometimes when you play as Sora and Riku, when you switch between the characters, like, these worlds would be completely different, but then sometimes they would be exactly the same. But that's just a minor complaint there. But now let's talk about the narrative, which I found pretty strong, especially towards the end of the game. I mean, most of the game revolves around this Mark of Masteries exam, which, I mean, to be honest, doesn't even matter. It really doesn't. And just like any other Kingdom Hearts game, obviously the Disney World stories are pointless. I mean, they never affect anything either. But this game does set up Kingdom Hearts 3 more than any other previous game. I mean, it's the game that we finally learn about Xehanort's background and his true plan of, like, gathering the 7 Guardians of Light and the 13 Seekers of Darkness. But something I did really like about this game is that something that I've had a problem with Kingdom Hearts as a whole is that I find it very tough to connect to the characters. I felt like this game really made me like Riku so much more, where he gets so much more development in this game as his storyline becomes the main storyline of the endgame, where Sora gets consumed by darkness and Riku has to go and save him. And coming out of this game, I think Riku is probably my favorite character in the franchise. I didn't even mention the inclusion of characters from The World Ends With You, which did seem pretty pointless, as they do get a good chunk of screen time in Traverse Town, but they're never shown actually doing anything, and they don't really affect the plot too much anyway. But overall, I did have a pretty good experience with Dream Drop Distance. I mean, I will admit that I do think the mid-game dragged on a little bit. I did find it kind of redundant how the final few boss battles were once again fighting Ansem and Xemnas again, but I did like what they did narratively here. I mean, they put the final pieces that were needed to move on to Kingdom Hearts 3, allowing us to learn more about Xehanort, who, despite being the main antagonist of the entire series to this point, we know almost nothing about him. So because of that, I came out of this game really excited getting around to play Kingdom Hearts 3. But I had to play one more game before I got to that game, and that was 0.2, A Fragmentary Passage, which was meant to be a teaser for Kingdom Hearts 3. It was an original game built for this 2.8 collection, and it tells us the story of Aqua's time while she was in the Realm of Darkness, after the true ending of Birth by Sleep. And 0.2 here is fine. I mean, it's what you would expect from a teaser. It's really short. I finished it in about an hour and a half, which is around the same length that I would take to complete one world in any main series game. And the game was split into 4 different levels that had inspirations from locations from Birth by Sleep, and I thought that was a really cool callback. Obviously, we see more of Aqua, who I love as a character. I think she might be my favorite character in all of Kingdom Hearts. I mean, again, it's her and Riku. But something else I did like about this game was how they tied in this game's narrative to Kingdom Hearts 1, where Mickey encounters Aqua right before KH1's ending, showing that Aqua sacrificed herself to save Riku. And I like that world building there, that interconnectivity there. However, I did find it really ridiculous how They explained why Mickey didn't have any armor on in KH1, where he gets it like stripped off of him by the darkness. Like, it's so dumb. Like, it's such a blatant retcon. I mean, mind you, this entire DLC is a retcon, but it's like, that was like the most ridiculous retcon to me. But I did like how they put this game together. Obviously, the game ends with the beginning of KH3, which I mean, I did find strange, as it's literally the exact same cutscene. I mean, obviously, it would be exciting if I was playing this at the time that 2.8 came out, but playing this now, where I just moved on to Kingdom Hearts 3 immediately afterwards, it's just kind of meh. But overall, I did enjoy 0.2 for what it is. I mean, there just isn't much to say about it because it is so short. Now let's move on to the movie that was included on 2.8, which is Keyback Cover, which I did start watching while playing Dream Drop Distance, but watched it over the course of a few days, watching about like 20 minutes at a time. It's not even that long either. I mean, it's only like a little bit over an hour long, but Back Cover here is a tie-in film to a mobile game that took place during the Keyblade War, years before the beginning of the actual series, and it shows the events from the perspective of the foretellers, the Keyblade Masters that served under the Master of Masters, who disappeared, and before he does, he gives each of the foretellers a role, and a lot of the movie focuses on the foretellers learning what their role is, and also them trying to find a traitor. But I did find it really weird how we never actually learn who the traitor is. Obviously, we will in the future of Kingdom Hearts, I'm sure. It's obviously a storyline that's being set up for the future. But from a pure, like, movie standpoint, like, as a piece of media, I do find it strange how they start a story, but they don't really end it. Like, this movie doesn't have a set beginning, middle, end. It's more so, like, beginning, the start of the middle, and then it just cuts off. So while I did really like how this film really expanded the lore of the franchise, with the foretellers obviously going to be a prominent feature in the next saga of Kingdom Hearts, I did wish it was a more cohesive narrative on its own right. But again, as a piece of lore in Kingdom Hearts, it is really great. But that's everything from 2.8. Obviously, I got that done, and I was ready to move on to Kingdom Hearts 3. And I will admit that I was spoiled on certain major plot points by the time I played it. But I enjoyed the game nonetheless. I mean, it's not perfect. I know a lot of people were so disappointed with this game. I mean, the fan community for the game, from what I understand, is very mixed. And I can definitely understand why. I mean, I can understand why this was looked at as a disappointment after 14 years of waiting since KH2. But as a newer Kingdom Hearts fan, someone that just played the games over the course of the last year, as a conclusion to the saga, I do like it here. I mean, I did really enjoy it. I mean, I do question the game's structure, but we'll talk about that later. But overall, I enjoyed the game. Let's start off with the gameplay, though, which, as you would expect, is very similar to previous games. I mean, it feels like a steady evolution of the systems from KH2, adding in systems from other games like Birth by Sleep and Dream Drop Distance as well. We got stuff like the shot lock system, we got flow motion, which obviously came a lot of focus on free running, where Sora could just run up cliffs now and buildings. Something new here was the attraction flow attacks, which use like Disney park rides as inspiration, which I did find kind of weird. I mean, I also didn't love that they were pretty much completely RNG on which ones you would get, but I thought they added a new dynamic to the gameplay, and overall they were just fine. And the same thing goes for like the team up attacks and also the special Keyblade attacks, where in this game it seemed like they were completely up to RNG which one would appear, and because of that, I felt like there was a lot less agency from the player during combat, and I can understand why people would find that disappointing. But I personally really enjoyed the combat in this game, probably more than any other game in the franchise. I mean, that being said, it was also probably the easiest combat in the franchise, which is also another factor. I'm someone that plays games for the experience, for the narrative, not really for the difficulty. I mean, I'm someone that I usually play games either on easy or normal. I don't go for harder difficulties unless it's a game that I'm really, really into, unless it's like my second or third playthrough of a game. But like, considering I couldn't get through the Ansem fight in Kingdom Hearts 1 and also the Vexen fight in Rechain of Memories, I do play the Kingdom Hearts games on the easiest difficulty. But for me, this was definitely the easiest game to finish out of the entire bunch. Where coming into the end game, despite being underleveled, I mean, I believe you're supposed to be somewhere in the range of like level 42 or something. I was level 39. I never died at any of the bosses, and for me, that's a positive. I can understand why people find that to be a negative. I know why people wanted the final Xehanort fight to be brutally difficult, but it's like, for me, I'm fine with the way it is. Now let's talk about the Disney worlds, which, just like most other Kingdom Hearts games, I mean, they're my least favorite parts. I mean, I know a lot of people love the Disney aspect. For me, I don't care about it. And most of them bring nothing to the overall narrative, and while some of them do have some pretty cool set pieces, especially in this game, I feel like they were just halting me from experiencing the main reason I was excited for this game, which was because this was the conclusion to the Xehanort saga. But despite this, I did enjoy some of the worlds here. I mean, the Toy Box is one that I really enjoyed from a level design standpoint of taking place all within a toy store, and you going from department to department to fight different types of Heartless. The Kingdom of Corona is probably my favorite from a character perspective, and again, the cutscenes in this portion of the game were just simply beautiful. I mean, they look like they were right out of a Pixar film. Monstropolis was kind of a dull world to me, in my opinion. I mean, it was mostly a linear section of the game, and I wasn't a big fan of how the game was designed there. Arendelle was just boring. I mean, I never cared for Frozen as a whole. And also having to deal with Olaf was just really annoying. The Caribbean was probably where I was the most impressed from a gameplay standpoint, where to see them build this entire naval combat system just for this little section of the game was very impressive to me. But narratively, I found this one to be probably the most boring of the bunch. San Francisco was a really weird structured level as well. I did think it was fun to fly around the city, but outside of that, I didn't really care for what was going on there either. I mean, I love how I even forgot about Olympus. I mean, Olympus was fine. I mean, while it was a cool tutorial, I did find most of the level kind of boring. I mean, there was some fun, like running up cliffs and sliding through the fires and all that sort of stuff. But it was fine. I was kind of underwhelmed, though, by the lack of Radiant Garden or Destiny Island gameplay, as they were only shown in cutscenes, which was kind of weird considering how important they are to the overall series. So to have them in this game but just not playable was a weird choice to me. But now let's talk about the narrative, which conceptually I found brilliant. I mean, this is essentially the Avengers for the Kingdom Hearts franchise, where all these groups that we've seen together in previous games, the main series trio, the Birth by Sleep trio, and the 358 over 2 days trio, those characters and storylines finally come together here. But not just those, we also get threads from things like Recoded and Union Key, which was surprising to me. But the biggest flaw to me is that nothing of importance happens until after you finish the Disney worlds. Like, it's so strange how we have like, what, 3/4 of the game and like nothing happens in the main narrative. But in the back fourth of the game, everything happens. I mean, you spend the first 3/4 looking for the power of waking, which is this all-powerful power that just seemed like it was made up solely as a plot device. And we never really get the full rules of what this power is, how Sora even eventually got it back, all that sort of stuff. Like, it's just kind of dumb. And that made the first like 20 hours of the game feel kind of underwhelming, when the main reason I was playing the game was for really what happened in the last like 5-ish hours. Like, from the point you leave San Francisco on, it's fantastic. I mean, all the stuff with Aqua is probably my favorite content in the entire game, where Aqua wakes up in the realm of light. Like, that was such a great scene. And then we go from that immediately to the Land of Departure and Awakening Ventus. That was fantastic as well. I love how we get like a Mass Effect-esque like final day sequence where all the characters are interacting the day before the final battle. That was really fun. And then we get to the Keyblade Graveyard, where I didn't love the prolonged start of it, where the opening scenes were kind of fine, and I liked the final world as a whole, but after that, I felt like the Lynch stuff was just kind of boring to have to fight him, like, 7 times over and over again. It's really annoying. That really ruined the pacing there. And having to watch the opening scene again was just kind of weird. But obviously, once we get to the fight between the 7 Guardians of Light and the 13 Seekers of Darkness, it's fantastic again. It's fantastic from that point on. I mean, I love all these fights. I mean, the character interactions there were fantastic. Though I didn't love how right after you killed a certain enemy, you would get the cutscene right away. It just seemed dumb logically, because essentially you're saying, so other guy that you're fighting is just like standing there waiting, say, oh yeah, I'm going to let you have that conversation there. It's just kind of ridiculous. But again, there were great scenes within this. I mean, Luxor's final words were really fun, and you could definitely tell that's setting up a storyline in the future as well. The reunion of both the Birth by Sleep trio and the 358 over 2 days trio, that was really great, really heartwarming. But I didn't love how Sora was involved in every fight. I mean, obviously you kind of had to have it that way from a gameplay standpoint, as you would want all the stuff that you've built up to this point to be worth it by having Sora, the character that you've leveled up and everything, be involved in all these fights. But I thought narratively, it just made Sora too important. Like, I don't love the aspect of like Sora needed to be at all these spots at the moments that all these enemies were defeated. I think it would have been a lot better if you were playing as like Riku for that Riku fight, playing as Mickey for when he fights his stuff, playing as Aqua during the fight with Terra Xehanort, like that sort of stuff. I mean, I don't love the fact that Sora was the playable character for all this. And mind you, they kind of fix it for Remind, but we'll talk about that a bit later. After that, we get Xehanort killing Kairi, and I really want to like Kairi. I mean, I feel like Kairi is the type of character that you should be liking in the series, but it just feels like Nomura doesn't want to actually make her likable. I mean, she just easily gets captured by Xemnas and then just gets killed just like that. We do get the final boss battle with Xehanort in Scala Ad Kalium, or whatever it was called, which was a really nice looking world. I really like that area. But I did find the final Xehanort fight to be kind of underwhelming, where I found the boss with Xemnas, Ansem, and young Xehanort to be a much better boss battle. And I also didn't like how they had to redeem Xehanort at the end there. Now, I'm pretty sure this is to set up a storyline for the future. And also, I mean, normally I am a fan of complex villains. I don't love it when people are purely evil or purely good in a narrative. I feel like that's lazy writing. But for them to not even set this up and then throw it in at the last second, I feel like it's even lazier writing. Though again, I do think this is setting up storylines for future Kingdom Hearts games. And we end the game with Sora using the power of waking to revive Kairi, but then loses himself in the process. And I thought that was a great ending. That shot of him fading away is fantastic. I think such a great way to end this entry in the series, and a great way to lead into Remind, which obviously I'll talk about in a bit. But we also get a post-credit scene, which I absolutely adored. To be honest, it might be one of my favorite scenes in the entire series, where we have the Lushu reveal, where Lushu turns out to be Xigbar, which just came out of left field, but also just makes perfect sense. I feel like that's like the perfect sort of thing, because, I mean, really, in reality, you can tell that this was not the plan when Xigbar was initially introduced, but when they created the concept of Lushu, everything just fit there. And that's something I do find very impressive narratively. But also, this sets up the future fight against the Foretellers, which obviously is going to be the next saga in the Kingdom Hearts franchise. So overall, I feel like Kingdom Hearts 3 has some of the highest highs in the entire franchise to me. I mean, I really enjoyed the base gameplay. I think it has some of the best narrative moments in the entire franchise. Again, most of the last few hours stretch being everything I wanted from Kingdom Hearts from the very beginning. So while I did question some decisions that were made with the lack of importance to the first 20 hours of the game, and what seemed like some cutbacks in terms of some important worlds like the Destiny Islands and Radiant Garden, I still did love my experience with this game, quite possibly more than any other game in the series. But before we end here, I do want to at least talk about Remind, which, for full disclosure here, I did not play myself. I did end up watching a Let's Play of it instead, as, to be honest, I didn't want to spend $30 on it. I mean, it is a pretty short DLC that is mostly a retread of the ending of Kingdom Hearts 3, but also the inclusion of brutal boss battles that, again, if you can't tell by the way I've talked about so far, not really my thing. But I do think there's some interesting story stuff to talk about here, where we did get 3 different scenarios with the main Remind story, which was mostly a repeat of the Keyblade Graveyard stuff from KH3, which I found pretty pointless. I mean, we did get more scenes, and we did also get to see how Sora did rescue Kairi, which obviously involved him traveling back in time and refighting the organization, which, again, they did allow you to play as these other characters this time, which I thought that was good, but for the most part, this was kind of pointless. There was some new content, though, that was pretty strong, like the Luxord and Xigbar conversation, which was great. Seeing young Xehanort meet the Master Masters was really fun. I did like how this pretty much tied up the loose ends with the Kingdom Hearts 3 ending. I just wish this entire DLC was new content instead of the middle section being stuff we've already seen. Now for the Limit Cut episode, which I did like how we got to see what happened after Sora's disappearance. It was nice to see the Final Fantasy characters back, though they were barely there. Again, the boss battles that were involved here, not really my thing, but I did love the cutscene that you get at the end of it, where it sets up a future game of Riku finding Sora. But then we also get the secret ending, which is even more interesting to me, where we see Sora meeting up with Yozora from the Verum Rex game within the Toy Box world of Kingdom Hearts 3. And the entire storyline here builds up so many possibilities that really intrigued me about the future of the franchise. So overall, I do love the setup that they did here with Remind, even though I personally don't feel like its gameplay was enough for me to actually buy it for myself. So there you go, I'm finally caught up on Kingdom Hearts, kind of. But I've talked through every piece of media that I have played or watched in this series. I'm definitely coming out of this experience pretty high on Kingdom Hearts at this point as a franchise, much higher than I was when I made the 1.5 plus 2.5 video. I'm considering doing a series ranking of these games at some point down the road, so that might be fun at some point. And also, I would like to do a video where I talk about the future of the franchise. I think that would be fun as well. But for now, that's the video. Thank you for watching.